Colin Demarest.
Hey y'all. I'm back for our final two conversations of the morning. Our next guest is a former Marine officer and the ranking member of the House Armed Services Strategic Forces Subcommittee. Please welcome to the stage Congressman Seth Moulton. Thanks for making the trip down this morning. Let's start broad, as I did with Kerry. How are you thinking about space competition with Russia, with China, with all the other maybe spacefaring states?
Well, I'm thinking that we've got a lot of work to do. And the good news is that we've come a long way in the last 5 or 10 years. I mean, when I started on the committee about a decade ago, it felt like space was where we were most behind. In terms of the curve, we might have been, in absolute terms ahead, but the pace of our space development was not nearly as fast as our adversaries, particularly China, and we've done a lot to improve. We're in a much better place today in terms of putting the capabilities up there that we need and getting that done quickly. But the problem is our adversaries are accelerating as well. And there's no question that I think space is the most important warfighting demand. It's why I've chosen to be on that committee right now.
Who or what do you credit to the bump in U.S. performance?
Well, I mean, there's been tremendous increased focus on space from Congress. There are a lot of us in dark rooms asking really tough questions for a while. Mike Rogers has been, I think, done a great job, and his predecessor, Mac Thornberry, along with Adam Smith, in advancing this as well. I think that the leadership recognizes that this is important. And I'll even give a little bit of credit to the first Trump administration in changing some focus to space, and the Biden administration for following on that. It's a little bit curious that now all of a sudden the Trump administration is cutting really key components of the space budget, resilient GPS, commercial sensing. A lot of things are being cut, all in the name of just giving more money to the Golden Dome, which we can talk about.
Oh, we're definitely going to hit on Golden Dome. But do you think the Space Force is getting the resources it needs?
No.
The one
Nope.
or the one budget to it? No. Okay.
Nope.
Why?
No, it's not because. Look,
what do they need?
The bottom line is that space is where we, I think, are most at risk of falling behind, and that's still the case, even though we're doing better. And so space should be the priority. I mean, in very broad terms, if you appointed me Secretary of Defense for a day, one of the
Secretary of War.
Secretary of Defense, thank you.
Yeah.
Congress has not approved that political stunt. I'm sure there are colleagues of mine who are trying. But one of the first things I would do is just say this needs to be a bigger priority. We have a lot of money that we're pouring into things like the F-35, an aircraft that's out there to fight China that can't quite reach China. We should actually be putting a lot more money into things like space.
And so right now, I think a lot of people's eyes are on the money going into Golden Dome. Is $175 billion a realistic price tag? And is 2028 achievable? And what does that even look like?
What are you trying to achieve?
I'm not the president.
No one knows. I just want someone to explain to me exactly what Golden Dome is supposed to do, because no one has actually articulated a theory of deterrence that works for Golden Dome. No one has explained why, although mutually assured destruction has kept us safe since 1945, suddenly we are going to change tactics. And if the administration would simply provide a theory of the case, then we could have a discussion about whether this is even a worthwhile investment. Because we just heard Kerry Bingen talk about how Russia and China are developing a lot of alternative delivery methods, specifically because of the defenses that we currently have. And I've asked this question in committee. Administration officials have said, "Oh no, Golden Dome does not protect against sea launched nuclear or underwater nuclear weapons that Russia is developing, for example. Doesn't protect against that. You have this whole space-based interceptor layer at the same time as we know now that Russia is putting a nuclear weapon in space or has the capability of doing so. So in other words, what that means is that with the push of one button, Russia could wipe out our entire space-based interceptor layer. If they actually wanted to attack the United States, why wouldn't they push that button? And the administration has no answers for any of this.
Why do you think there is that dearth of information, right? Because there was a directive that came down to stop people from talking about it. It was very obvious that space.
Well, look, there's two explanations for how we got into this situation where we're trying to spend hundreds of billions of dollars, even though the estimate is about 500 billion and they're talking about 130. There's two explanations for how we got into this place with no theory of the case, and yet we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on something that perhaps is a waste of money, perhaps is a brilliant idea, or perhaps is really dangerous. One answer is that every nuclear strategist, including everybody who worked in the first Trump administration, basically everyone who worked in this for 70 years was wrong, and thank God Donald Trump came around and said, you know what we need is a golden dome. Everybody else was wrong, but this is going to keep us safe. The other possible explanation is that Donald Trump saw something that his friend had and wanted the golden version of it, and thus we have the golden dome.
Which friend?
And when Netanyahu, obviously, oh, that's iron, well, we'll have a golden one. Since no one can justify why we're spending this money, you take a wild guess. How many people out here support Golden Dome today? No one's on it right.
No one's going to raise their hand to that.
All right, okay, interesting.
I see one, and I know who he is.
How many supported Golden Dome 12 months ago before the president mentioned it? How many of my colleagues on committee were saying, you know what, everything we're doing is wrong. We should be focused on putting space-based interceptors up there. I mean, it's unbelievable how much everyone has just become subservient to this idea because it came from Trump without any actual justification. So look, in the best case scenario, we're just going to blow several $100 billion of US taxpayer money on something with no proof of concept, no theory, no studies to show how it would work, not even a debate in committee, a legitimate debate in committee about whether it's a good use of money. But the worst case scenario is it actually makes us a lot more dangerous.
Do you think China and Russia will take it as a provocation? They have obviously said they don't like the idea of it, but what happens if it actually gets built? Does that complicate nuclear strategy, an arms race, arms control?
It almost assures an arms race, because China is going to say we have to get around this, and Russia is going to say we have to get around this. And I mean, the history of this, it's pretty clear. Russia started developing hypersonics when we pulled out of the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. Before 1972 or whenever it was signed, there were a lot more nuclear weapons in the world than there were afterwards. We know how this works. And when you have a lot more nuclear weapons and a lot of alternative delivery methods that can't be detected, it makes the world less stable. That makes us all less safe. So we have a theory of deterrence that's kept us safe since 1945. If we want to upend that theory of deterrence and say, nope, we're going to take a totally different strategy, we're not going to promise that we just wipe you out. We are going to stop you from attacking us. Then make that case. Explain why that works. And explain how it makes us more safe before we blow hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars on it. That's all I ask. As a member of the Armed Services Committee, that is my job to ask these questions, and it's pretty amazing that the administration can't give any answers to any of them.
Have you raised these concerns to General Gutlein?
I have raised these concerns with everyone I can talk to, and I think that, look, I think that what many in the Air Force and the Space Force would say is there are a lot of things sort of under the Golden Dome banner that we can invest in that are important. And I agree with that. We need to improve our sensing capabilities because we know that we cannot detect hypersonics right now. Of course, this is because we designed the system for a world that didn't have hypersonics. There was a reason why we all stopped developing them. But be that as it may, we have to improve sensing. We obviously have to do a lot to improve defenses right around our military bases today, from things like drones, right?
Yeah, spiders,
and that's considered part, right. I mean, that's sort of considered under the Golden Dome banner. Tremendous bipartisan support for that. We've had hearings on it. We all agree this is a good investment. These are kinds of investments that we should make. But putting a whole bunch of space-based interceptors up in the, in low Earth orbit that, according to existing theory, significantly destabilizes things, and that Russia can take out with the push of one button, we ought to ask some questions about that before we make that investment.
Last question before we get the boot here. Does it make a difference for Spacecom to be in Colorado or Alabama, or does that just not matter to a New Englander?
That's a good question. You know, Kennedy was originally going to put a whole bunch of NASA stuff in Cambridge, and then when Johnson came in, a whole bunch of that moved to Texas. So I understand how this sometimes happens, but the point is it's a political decision. And I would just love to see the administration make decisions based on facts and studies and legitimate debates, not based on the whims of the president. I think that would be great for our national security.
That's the last word. Congressman, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.